Hello, and welcome to the Thinking and Tech podcast. I'm one of your co hosts, Dylan. I'm joined here with my co host, Baz. And this is a podcast about two guys that both work in tech and we like to talk about tech. So, we have a great show today. We're going to be kind of delving into our software development workflows a little bit, specifically how it's changed recently with the new integration of all these great AI tools. A lot has changed, and the way that software is built now is basically completely different than it was even just a year ago. We'll also be chatting about some of the recently announced brand new MacBook Neo, the first new member of the beloved MacBook line in 18 years. And before we get started, if those watching could be kind enough to hit the like button if you're watching on YouTube. We have a ton of fun doing these podcasts, and we really want to grow our audience as much as possible. Those like counts go a huge way of helping us find an audience. And click the subscribe button too so you don't miss out on more great future episodes. All right, let's go ahead and jump right into our first segment, which is AI workflows. And before we get started, I'll give a quick personal disclaimer for myself, just for anyone who may or may not be listening. Anything discussed on my side in this episode is how I use AI in my personal workflows. It's not a description of how I may or may not be using AI in a professional work environment. So I'm not giving away any secrets here or anything. This is all me. Okay. Great. So let's get started by explaining what some of these AI software tools are, like the interfaces and how they're used by developers. Baz, would you like to share a little bit what
Sure.
some of them are that are available?
Yeah. Well, so you've got uh, there's a couple of different paradigms that have developed in the past few years. One is sort of I'd say an integration with existing tools. This would be like Copilot and Cursor, um, and then the other paradigm that seems to be really popular right now is tools like Claude Code, which really are intended to be used standalone, or can be used standalone. And you can think of those as the distinction here is, you know, the augmented code editors, right? It'll pop up, suggestions for what it thinks you want to do. Um, there is a tech sort of a agent interface where you can give it instructions or ask questions and then go back and forth and then apply changes to the code. Um, Versus, Claude Code is like CLI and it doesn't integrate with a specific code editor. So I guess in that sense, um, you don't have to have a special code editor. You can just use whatever you are using. A lot of people don't even bother necessarily with that too much. Literally let Claude do all the lifting and editing, and if they go look at the code, it's minimal compared to. So that's a very big difference, I think, between the way some people have worked in the past.
Absolutely. I think that later part you're kind of describing there almost kind of goes into more what's being called vibe coding lately, and that's
Yeah.
almost like almost a different role almost. Like I almost kind of separate that from traditional software developing now, and we'll
Hmm.
dive a little deeper in that as we go. But that's basically couldn't say it better myself. It's kind of like the main big ones. I feel like it started off with, at least in my experience, I think the very first one I used was like GitHub Copilot. So using that right
Hmm.
in Visual Studio Code, which is like a code editor for anyone who's not a developer, is where you write your code and you manage your code projects. And it almost so that was maybe like 2023 that first came out around that time. Might have been earlier, but so basically, what Copilot would do, the GitHub Copilot, is you're writing your code, and then it'll kind of predict what it thinks you might write next. So the next line of code you might write next. It's almost like autocomplete on your phone. So on your phone when you're typing out a sentence, it will try to think what words you're going to use next. With this, it tries thinking what code you're going to do next, and it does a pretty good job for more like the standard boilerplate kind of code you might write that's in like 1,000 different projects, in the world. It does a pretty good job of kind of predicting what you want to use. If you like it, you just hit the tab button, which is basically on the keyboard, which says, yes, that is what I want. And it saves a lot of time. And so there's also Chat GPT, which I think is probably the most mainstream, AI service for people outside the development world. And kind of my experience using that was, um, I'd use almost like a Google, a more advanced Google, or
Hmm.
if I was, stuck with a code problem, issue, I would throw in my question. Before I'd throw that question on Google and try to look on Stack Overflow. Used to be a really popular website for helping people helping each other
Still
with
is.
code issues. But you might have to like look at 5 or 6 threads to find something that pertains to what you're working on.
Hmm.
Now I mostly use ChatGPT for that because it seems like it does it kind of how these AIs work is they crawl all those web pages and get information from them. So it's able to crawl those and have them in their database and really give you a personalized version of what you're looking for. And the last, I'd say, big tool, let's see, I said, so like Copilot, like the autocomplete, uh, ChatGPT, which is like a separate, you might go on the website, and exactly what you said, Boz, about, Cloud Code and having it, either on the command line or that agent in the code editor. So there's like the three, kind of three
Hmm.
main interfaces, I suppose you can say, for using AI with software development. And
Right.
yeah, so Baz, do you want to share just some of your personal experiences, what it's been like, adapting to these tools and integrating them into your workflow?
Yeah. I primarily use Cursor, which is basically Visual Studio Code that Dylan mentioned earlier, but it's been customized with all of these AI features, including an agent mode, a planning mode, and these are things that the where the AI system can, like Claude Code, just kind of take your instructions and run with it. Um, what I really like about that is, if I tell it, it's tightly integrated with the editor, right? So if I tell it go do this thing, and it makes changes across 10 different files, I can then get a quick list and comparison of all the changes it made. What the code looked like originally, um, what was edited. So if I'm unsure as to what it did, right, I can just go in and click. Oh, that looks good. Approve. Yes, approve. Approve. Right. So it kind of builds in a code review process, which is where people will sit around a table and look at code together. Uh, I so I like having that kind of level of control. I like to see what's going on. I'm very hands on. Um, and in my experience is that these tools, while powerful and useful, sometimes completely go off the rails, right? So they need some guidance, and um, I, in terms of how I approach the tools and how I work with them and how my workflow has changed, I have been regularly keeping a journal. For instance, it's like a diary. It's like a development diary. Um, I tend to be extremely verbose, uh, but it lets me write down my thoughts as they flit through my head, right? And what I was thinking, and I found it incredibly helpful to be able to go back in time. In some cases, one of these projects I've been working on now for like 15 months, right? So I can go back to the very beginning and read what I was thinking at the time and compare it to, what the project's current needs are. Um, I'm gratified to find that a lot of my original thinking is still in the project, um, but it's very useful because programming requires all this context, right? You got to load all this context in your head in order to make good decisions about how to write code and how to structure systems. And it's so easy to get lost in the weeds. Like, even just over the span of 2 minutes, I can be staring at a piece of code and my mind will fly off the handle, and I'll be like, why am I thinking about this? I need to, wheel it back. Let's read the thing I was just writing. And, having the journal really can help me. So I still do that. Um, And of course, you can ask the AI agents to do a lot of the planning, like I do in my journal. It's about architecture. It's about planning. Sometimes it's about specifics, like I got to try this. I'm going to try that. It's not working. Why is this broken? You know. Um, but I've included now, right? You can include parts or output from the AIs into that, um, and to a large extent, um, having the agents is like having a team of junior developers working for you, where you can say, I don't trust you necessarily to go architect my system from the ground up, new guy, but go like refactor this. I just did this morning, right? I'm like looking at this big chunk of user interface code that I've been working on, and I find that I'm passing the same variables to dozens of different routines. I'm like, that's unwieldy, right? So go refactor this code to change that and make it simpler to use, right? For me as the developer, make it easier to use, right? It's great at stuff like that. It can also be good at like make this module um, from scratch, right? And then I'll analyze it myself, tweak it. I may go through some iterations, but it'd be like working with another, developer, and you're breaking up tasks. And of course, you're not paying actual, you're not paying for actual butts and seats, right? So you can do this across, uh, hey, I want to do this, in Cursor, but now I've got a question about this. So I'm going to put this over here in Gemini or Chat GPT or, the Claude chat bot. And you can really kind of get all these different um, views and attitudes from just different ways that these models have ingested and organized this knowledge.
Totally. Yeah, I found myself doing that same thing where if I get something questionable back from Claude, maybe like, let me see what ChatGPT thinks about this. Like almost like, when you would have been working in office, you kind of ask coworkers, and I still do this with coworkers, I'll send someone a message or, pick their brain a little bit about something, but it's just kind of another, more sources for opinions, which is
Yeah.
awesome.
And of course, sometimes your coworkers are full of it. No offense to anybody working with Dylan.
Yeah,
But
we'll say
we all
my
get,
my make believe coworkers, not my actual coworkers.
yeah, yeah,
I'll say that.
we all get wrong ideas sometimes, and
It's
it's
true.
it's good to have someone to bounce that off of. Like you, I used to spend a huge amount of time in Google trying to extract technical knowledge from things other people have written on blogs, on sites like, Stack Exchange, Reddit, what have you. And that's even more fraught with peril because a lot of the people who take the time to respond to things like that are um, exceptionally extra wrong many
Many
times.
times, yeah. So you'll plop in your project just to find it breaks it even more, right?
Yeah, and or there's not context, or it's referring to a 5-year-old API that doesn't even exist anymore, and it's like it's so frustrating. So um, the key, a key value I find in using these tools for me is they're essentially they're going out, they're pulling the entire internet in to this database, uh, and they're averaging out everything that is said and written about a topic. And it's not organized that way. That's not how the neural nets work. I still don't completely understand it, but it's not like curated information or anything like that. It's not like Wikipedia, right, where people who know a thing or have researched a document can write about it, right? It's um, the math is beyond me. But what you get is you're combining, you know, there is useful stuff in some of these sites, right? But you're also combining it with like real world code, right?
Hmm.
In the responses you get. So you can really get great. Like if you were to ask on Reddit, what's the best way to architect, like how to solve this problem and what's the best architecture, you're going to get a lot of opinions, right? And the people who respond to these things are people with opinions, if you know what
Oh
I
yeah.
mean, right? Okay.
Why are you
There's
even using this framework? Delete your whole project, start over,
yeah,
use
that's
this completely.
crap. You know, you can, you know, blah blah blah. Exactly. Like just quit being a programmer. You
Yeah.
suck.
Yeah.
It's just so much of that kind of garbage. Like 90% of responses on these sites are
And you can ask the
basically
AI
that.
to talk to you like that if you respond well to that.
I
But
guess you
normally
could,
they
yeah.
don't. Yeah.
No, and they don't. It gets rid of all of that, and it really
Yeah.
helps summarize usefully, like state of the art. How do other people solve problems, whatever. Um, so that's useful.
It's just instant too, because with these websites,
Pretty much,
you post on
yeah.
Reddit, wait 3 4 hours, hopefully
Or
someone
days,
responds.
yeah,
Days, Stack Overflow, same thing. Get one response is not useful. The AI, you can copy and paste, a portion of your code and just instantly get good feedback on it. It's that's kind of that theme with AI. It's much quicker, much more productive.
yeah. Um, I um, I think you're going to talk about the fun levels, right, of working this way because as programmers, I think as healthy programmers, we derive entertainment value from and gratification, right, from solving a problem. Uh, at the same time, the frustration level can be intense if you have a problem that is intractable. So we like to have some challenge, but we don't want to be so challenged that we're pulling our hair out for 3 days and
Exactly.
blocking the whole project. That has killed so many projects for me in the past. Just like I can't figure this out,
Just can't even look at it
it's
anymore, right?
and a lot of times it's just some really dumb, mistake, like off by one, or I forgot to initialize this variable. It's just dumb, first year programmer stuff that
Which
we all still do. Um,
Yeah, but a lot of that seems like it's almost might be part of the past now, just with this integration of AI. It just that's
yeah,
what it's so good at is picking up on those things because it just kind of
right.
computerizes itself over it, where it's just easy for a human to just become blind to it. So almost like similar to
Yeah.
the old way of doing software research through Googling on Reddit and Stack Overflow. That almost seems like it's mostly a part of the past now as well.
Well, that is possibly true, and it's something we're going to have to be cautious about
Hmm.
because we don't. If there, I think there's this concern about AI ingesting the output of AIs. Like I mentioned, the mathematics is basically creating statistical averages of the information it pulls in. If you go through cycle after cycle where you're just pulling that in, the information is going to get less and less useful over time. So we need some way to keep generating like true information
I was thinking about
out of
that,
human
and
brains.
it's like I feel like is there a less of incentive for people to go out and to share these things, or even they're people aren't even trying to share the issues they have for people to answer because they're just taking it to the AIs. So is that going to be a problem in 5 10 years? Where the software technology advances, but there's less resources for the AI even to learn about it because real people aren't sharing it online, or is it just helpful that they're being built along with the AI? The AI learns as it's being built. It'll be interesting to see what the landscape looks like a little bit in like 5 or so years.
Well, I mentioned I keep this development journal on my Apple II emulator project that exceeded, I think it's exceeded 11,000 lines of text now. It's basically a novel or a large textbook. Um, and I'm thinking, aside from the source code, right, which is public, I also, all of that documentation, including my development journal for that project, are in the GitHub repository. So it's
Mm-hmm.
available there for some future AI to scrape and ingest and consider in its responses. I kind of had this thought that, gee, I wonder. because I've been doing this for a year and a half, or not quite, but I wonder how many iterations where my own repo has been scraped, and now some of
Yeah,
the
it'd be
AI systems
interesting
out
if,
there know about my thing
yeah,
more specifically, right?
it'd
So
be
you got
interesting
we
if
got to
GitHub. Sorry, go ahead.
we got to keep some feedback into these systems, I guess, is the bottom line.
Absolutely. Yeah, I was gonna say I'll be interested if GitHub could add a feature, like those late '90s, early 2000s websites that had like the hit counters on it to show how many people viewed the
Right,
website. How many times
right.
has the AI scraped my repo?
That's a great idea, actually. On my other project, we've been having huge numbers of hits from Singapore and China. So one presumes that those AI systems people
Could
are
be, yeah.
developing, and the traffic volume is way over anything I get domestically. Uh, and I did some looking around, and other people have noticed this trend starting at a similar time.
Interesting.
So they're definitely doing some big scale AI training in Asia.
Yeah. Cool. And yeah, so I'll go over a little bit real quick, just kind of like what my experience has been. I kind of shared that a little bit just through our conversation, but what I'm working on a personal project, kind of my general setup. So I talked about before how it kind of begun with using Copilot and then kind of used between Copilot and ChatGPT. Really, that started this year. I started using Claude Code, which not the CLI version in a terminal, but actually like that panel within my dev environment. So
Hmm.
for visual code, and that's just been coding for me now. It's really I kind of compare it to it's almost like another layer of abstraction from the programming language. This is kind of like another layer on top where before people, in like the 70s and maybe early 80s, people would write just like in machine language code before they had programming languages like BASIC and C that would turn you would write it in more understandable English, and it takes this programming language and turns it into machine code for the computer to be able to, run those programs. Now you can almost use something like a integrated. I'm not sure if AI agent is the right term for it because it's not fully automated, but it's like I guess you're kind of working with AI agent. That might be correct. But so now instead, for my entire career, I did all the coding myself, and would use Reddit and Google for like, maybe take chunks of codes or use like different software packages, which are bundles of code that are reusable between projects. But most of it, I would write all those lines of code, and now with Claude, what I'm basically doing is it has like the chat bot or the chat area similar to ChatGPT right next to my code. I'm telling it, okay, this is what I want to do in the code. This is my idea, and then it says, okay, sounds great. And so for me, this is a non-vibe code. This is the difference between vibe coding and being a software developer with using AI is that I review everything that it comes up with. It shows the changes it wants to make. It shows what it wants to add. And I am reading every single line to make sure this code makes sense for the project I'm working in. This is what I want to use. This is a smart thing to add to the project, and it's helps me achieve my goal. For vibe coding, there's an option to not even review it and just tell it what to do, and it just plops it in there, and you don't even know what happens. Um, and I think that's great for like demos or small projects, or even just
Yeah.
like coming up with ideas. But once you're working like a real production level application, you definitely don't want to be vibe coding, in my opinion.
No.
um, but yeah, it's so much of my job as a developer now is reading and reviewing code. It's a lot less manually writing it, and it's still and the reading code was still a big part of the job before this. Because if you're working on teams, in a lot of software environments, like team environments, someone will work on some code. They'll push it up to a remote repository, and before they have it merge into the main branch, which is just like you have your what you send to the app store or what you put on your website. That's the main branch. So you work on your code in a separate environment, and then you say, okay, I want to put this code into the main branch, put on the what's on the production server, which is what customers see. You'll have someone else on your team review that and read the code, so that it's
Hmm.
almost like you're almost kind of doing a step before that, where you're reviewing what the AI is generating for you, and then you still send it to a human, or at least in most of the cases I've done with open source projects or whatever it is, you'll still have humans review it, because you want you I think you still want humans to review anything that goes in front of a customer, or anything that works with important data, have that be reviewed. Sorry about that. I just punched my microphone at the end of the recording. uh, Let's me get back to where I left off at. So yeah, just my experiences using these new integrate AI tools. It's definitely faster overall. Some you hear a lot of hype about AI. You hear a lot of people going on stage and making it sound like the most incredible thing in the world. It's world changing, and you know there is some hype, but some of it is real, and this is definitely something that's real. That's in my opinion, it's changed. You know, kind of changed the job of a software developer,
Hmm.
because you can still do it the old-fashioned way of writing, each line hand by hand if you want, or using limited AI tools. But I think at any company the you would be employed at, the expectation would probably be to use these AI tools to be more productive, because they're paying you by the hour. So they want to, if you can be more productive and quicker, that's going to be what they're going to want you to use. And I think there's pros and cons to that. Just as like as a professional doing this job, I think there's a little less brain fatigue that goes on versus something like you do a week of manual coding, and by the end of
Hmm.
the week, sometimes I was like, I don't even want to look at a screen anymore. You get stuck on those issues that just really kind of wreck your brain and make you want to punch the table. There's
Yeah.
less of that now, because you almost have a mid-level developer with you that you can almost like side load a little bit, that cognitive load a little bit, and have them help you out with that. Um, but I think from the fun point of view, as like a hobbyist, it kind of takes away a little bit of that fun of really trying hard to figure something out. And you might be stuck on something, or try and think about it while you're in the shower, you can't figure out the issue, and then you come back, then it just clicks there. And that's one of the greatest feelings ever, is when you just figure it out away from the computer. You're on your walk, you're petting your
Yeah.
dog or whatever, and it just comes to you. You figure it out. It's a eureka moment, and then you come back to your computer, and you put in that new function or fix that line, and it works. And that's you know that's one of the greatest feelings that I have as a developer. And I feel like that might be lost in this future, just because that little issue that you couldn't think about or you couldn't fix, you describe it in English to the AI, and it's like, oh, I know, I tried this suggestion, and you pop it in, and you're like, yep, that works. So there's pros and cons to that. It takes a little
Yeah.
bit of the fun away from that part, maybe. But like you were saying earlier, there is, just because the speed at it, there's fun in ways of how quickly you can build things and test out different ways.
Right.
So
I mean,
there's,
can't you get your
yeah,
satisfaction from getting things done a little further up the value stack?
yeah, exactly. That's kind of the point I was trying to hit, where
Yeah.
it's not like programming isn't fun anymore. It's not like all the satisfaction has been taken away. I think some of the hard parts, which were hard parts and difficult, but were still kind of fun as a puzzle, may not be as difficult. But you do still, it's the speed of it makes it fun, and being able to, because it's fun to solve issues, but also it's not fun being stuck on something for 3 days when it was due 2 days ago, and you just wanting to
Right.
curl up
Right.
in bed and cry. So yeah, there's pros and cons to it.
I
And
think there's one thing that just came to my mind, which is
mhm,
that these tools can greatly reduce the cost of experimenting.
that's a good point. Yeah, there's more room for like just some R&D and play around time, where before you only have so much time in like a work week where you need to get something done. You feel like you can't play around as much, can't experiment there. I could
Right.
definitely see there being more space for that now.
But you can also just ask the thing, right, to implement a test, right? Try doing it this way. Okay, try
Hmm.
doing it this other way. right? Whereas if you were to, and sometimes that would require a lot of just typing, a lot of reorganization, um, doing it by hand. So I think um, I'm leaning a little bit more on these tools now to do that sort of thing. Like, what would happen if I were to, change the implementation this way? They're pretty good at predicting like how things will work. Um, if you propose a certain type of a different approach, but all of that, if you were to actually just do, like I said, do it by hand before, you might spend 3 days just changing all of the places where a routine is called to a different method,
Right.
and now you can do it in minutes and then see if it was a good idea or not.
It
um,
does. It definitely helps removing some of those boring parts that were never
yeah,
fun in any scenario, right? They're
right.
really the grindy, uncreative parts that nobody liked doing. It does help remove that issue for
And if
sure.
if it didn't work or you don't like it, you can just hit undo and start
Yeah,
over, do it again. uh,
yeah, and 'cause it's still not perfect. So just in a project I was working on earlier, I was upgrading to a new major version.
mhm.
Excuse me, I was upgrading to a major version of framework, which was only updated a few months ago. So AIs haven't really had a chance to kind of scrape some of the useful data and common issues people have with this. And I worked with it for like a good half day trying. It's like, oh well, try this, put this in your config file, or oh try this, or try swapping out this library must not work anymore with this new updated framework. So try using a whole nother library and replace the entire any instance of you using that library in your application. Try replacing it. And I was like, yeah, I'll go with that. I don't see anything else on through Google telling me to try anything else. So this might be the way to do it. And um, I think I ended up finding it on a recent Reddit thread actually. So there's still some value in those where it was saying the Tailwind, or it wasn't exactly Tailwind, but one of those packages used for animations. There was a patch update, so it wasn't a major version update to that, but I had to update it, a minor version that was released like 3 weeks ago, and then it was just all working. It's fixed with the new framework, and the AI never suggested that. It had no idea. It
Right.
would have never told me that. So that's still
No.
part of the human element and investigate. Having to investigate and figure these things out. And I think that'll always be a needed part because the
Yeah.
AIs, they're helpful, but they can only do so much and know so much.
Well, yeah, it's all about the context, right? There's that word again. Like, how much can you need to solve problems, you need to put a bunch of information into your head and hold it in there while you're doing the work, right? If you forget, things can get super slow, prone to mistakes. The AIs need that context too. You can load up a lot. The context window, they call it, I think, on these systems has grown dramatically over the past 2 years. However, they do have limits. And one of the limits is, have they ingested this stuff before? But also, can you fit everything it needs to know into the context? Um, uh, Recently, 6 to 9 months, I think some of these systems are now able to go out and do Google searches, right, to find web pages that may be relevant and grab that information from those web pages, um, and load those into the context.
Which I've seen mixed results because Claude was
Yeah.
trying to do that when I was doing
Okay.
this, and it brought in a bunch of stuff, and
Uh,
it was still kind of getting stuck in that loop. So even with that, it's not
right.
perfect at that.
No, it helps, I think, but there's no smoking. The more you can direct it and point it, I think when you have challenges like that, you're going to have to do some good old fashioned work. But you can point it. You can say, well, what about this, right? And stick that in there, and it'll usually pat you nicely on the head and say, "Oh, thank you. That's great. You're so smart."
But you're a great genius brain of yours. Yes, you are absolutely correct. Very
That's oh
complimentary.
yeah, that's brilliant, or that's
Yeah.
genius. Yeah, these things are really over the top ingratiating. It's kind of annoying, actually.
And I feel like they've cooled them down a lot. Like if you look back when ChatGPT first came out, it would be like, here's 12 emojis about how excited I am about what you're wanting to do, and they've calmed down a little bit, but they're still pretty yes manny.
Yeah. So thumbs up or thumbs down AI in your job?
Yeah, no, yeah, thumbs up. Just working with AI and like, I yeah, like even if you're thumbs down, you can't really do anything about it. It's just it's the reality. It is part of software development now. You're gonna be using these tools, and if
Yeah.
not, if you're trying to compete in any way, you're gonna lose those competitions.
Yeah, I think it's a little unfair if managers are demanding, as they sometimes do, a certain measurement of usage of a tool. Like I've heard, like you've got to produce 50% of your code with AI and things like
I
that,
think at
right?
like Microsoft, and I feel like I like those big companies. You've been seeing those news articles come out about
Yeah,
that, yeah. And that reminds me of, you used to like hear these anecdotes and stories about like lines of code. They're like, okay, we give a bonus, or you need 5,000 lines of code, and then there'd be one person
yeah,
who would proudly turn in like negative 1,000 lines of code, and it doesn't show them
right.
adding code, it showed them cleaning code up and making things more efficient. So
Better.
that's,
Yeah, made things
when
better.
I
You get
read those
docked for that.
articles online, right, that's exactly what I think about.
Well, IBM used to pay you. This is in the '60s and probably through the '80s. They used to pay you per thousand lines of code you wrote.
Oh, really?
Yeah, like that's how you got compensated, was how much code you produced. Not so you're penalized for being efficient.
Hmm. And I like to think, hopefully we kind of learn from that. But as
You think?
people, these large companies are, because that they're trying to make their shareholders happy. They want to tell them that we're using AI,
Yeah,
and they want to just kind of just kind of the theme. And I guess things kind of go in circles. But I
yeah.
think
Well, there's
people
good
figure it out
managing
after a while.
and bad managing, and that sort of thing sorts itself out. Yeah, after a certain
Yeah.
amount of time.
Alrighty. I think that was a really great discussion on AI, using in software development, and I'll be interested in rewatching this episode in 5 years and compare it to see what the changes are. And
Right.
maybe it'll be interesting for us to come back later and look at this and kind of react to it, and see how different things are later
If
on.
our AI overlords 5 years from now allow us to take a break
Right.
from the
So
treadmill.
generously. Yeah. Hey, they need to get their energy from somewhere. Alrighty, so we will go on a break, and then we'll be right back to talk about the brand new MacBook that was just announced this week. Alrighty, we are back, and we're gonna hop in a little bit into some recent news. We're gonna talk about the new MacBook Neo that was just announced this week of recording. So this is what they're saying, and it's true. It's the most affordable MacBook Apple has ever released. It's at $600 starting price. Interesting thing about this is it's using actually the Pro model of the phone chip to run Mac OS on it, which I would assume is why they're able to make it as cheap as it is.
Hmm.
So it comes out March 11th. By the time this episode airs, my fiance will have hers because she is on a 2014 or 2015 MacBook Air, and that thing is
Oh
on
wow.
life support. And she's been meaning to buy a new like laptop for like 2 years and just hasn't pulled the trigger on it. She's like, no, it still works, kind of. I don't want to drop $1,000 on it. So there's some rumors that this was going to come out like a month or so ago, and I was telling her just
Okay.
hang on, because I think this one is what you've been waiting for. And she saw it. She's like, yes, I'm gonna buy that like day one. I'm like, perfect.
Nice. Uh, no, that's 10, no, 12, like 12 years
Since
she's
the
had
MacBook,
that.
yeah. Oh
Yeah.
yeah. Since her first year
Um,
of college, she bought that for, and I think she graduated in like 2018 or something. So
okay.
yeah,
Wow.
she's had it for
So
quite a bit.
that's remarkable. So I've had a bunch of PC laptops over the years,
Hmm.
right? And for a long time, and I would travel with them, right? So I would carry it back and forth to work. I hadn't had a home PC in a long time until I got my Mac Mini. Yeah, it was just more convenient to always have my work, machine with me, the way I worked. And I never had one last more than 2 or 3 years before it broke. right, for some reason. Um, and it's true that these Mac laptops are just more rugged and have a
Absolutely.
much longer lifespan. Like this thing's still working after 12 years, and she probably traveled around with it, right?
Yeah, no, she would,
Yeah.
when she worked in office, she would take it with her, have her personal laptop with her. She'd take it to school when she was, in college. Like that thing has seen, like, I'm pretty sure she took it to Europe, so yeah, it's been all over. And yeah, that's just, I'm not an Apple fanboy, but I am a fan of their products. I'll call them out when they do something wrong. Like I'm not as a huge fan of the liquid glass, design system they've introduced, but they make products that last. And this has been her personal laptop, the only one she's used for over 10 years, which is, what other piece of technology or
Yeah.
device that's come out that someone's able to use that and, for, their and she's not like a power user or anything. She's not a developer, but she checks her email on it. She does some light like Google Sheet work on it.
Hmm.
And like just kind of I guess regular people computer task. And that's what I think the new MacBook Neo will be perfect for. People who just need to check their emails or do some stuff on the Google suite of products like, um like word processors or some light spreadsheet stuff, sending
Yeah. So
emails.
almost like that Chromebook market.
I think that's a great comparison, but um, those things were
Not as cheap
famously
as your typical like
really
$300 Chromebook, but
right, and those things were very just. I only had like experience with one of them. I think like they came out right when I was finishing up high school, and even brand new, those things were junk. I think this
yeah.
gives consumers the accessibility to the higher quality Macintosh ecosystem at a more affordable price. So I think it's really kind of going for that market, but you know, it could last them 10 years and, probably work pretty okay.
Somebody, I came across a video on the old YouTube this morning. One of these, it's a guy, it's a parody kind of thing, and
Yeah.
his observations on Apple particularly, I think, is he tends to focus on. But Apple had a long history from the very early days of realizing that education was a key market. Uh,
Hmm.
because if you get kids used to using a certain computer in school, they believed it would translate to sales of that computer when those kids went out into the world. Uh,
Hmm.
and so they had, super discounted Apple II and Macintosh prices for schools for that reason, right? They were willing to make no money on those computers in order to um, get get these kids hooked on the Apple way, right?
Yeah,
Uh,
it worked. Maybe that's what happened to me because in elementary school, the Sarasota school district was still buying Apple computers, and they made
okay.
the switch around. Maybe I was in like third or fourth grade. Everything switched to PC, and I was so mad for the rest of my school career because I remember working on these, what I thought were great machines, Apples. They were the iMacs, like the very first ones, the colorful see-through ones. I
Hmm.
think they were the G3s, maybe. I might be wrong
Yeah.
about that, but they were just you walk in a classroom and you see these like awesome looking computers. It made it seem like something fun. You go on, especially compared to I had like Windows 2000 at home or XP later on, and like just even the user face. You minimize a window and it just kind of flies down into the bottom. Like that was such
Right.
just the joyful experience. Like wow, these things are awesome, and that even goes even when school stopped having them for me. I was raised in a lower middle class family, so we didn't have these computers at home. But some of the other kids in my neighborhood, they would have them at their house. I'd go to their house and just be amazed by the Mac ecosystem, the Apple ecosystem, and it seemed like this magical world that I didn't have access to. Um, Yeah, so going on a little bit of a tangent there, but I think having a product like this, because if this was available when I was in high school, that's something my parents would have, been able to get for me. Because I think the most expensive laptop they ever bought for me was in that $500 $6 range, and it was a Windows, it was like a Dell or whatever it was, one of those companies
Hmm.
that, take Windows and throw it on a, you know, maybe not the best kind of a laptop, with the specs it had, but yeah, I would have killed for this, growing up.
Yeah, and the construction looks just as good with the Neo here. I'm not sure about the name, but
It makes you think of the
uh,
Matrix a little bit, right?
yeah, it does. Yeah, that's a hard one to work with because of the weight of that cultural reference.
Apple, I think they decide that they're bigger than the Matrix. It's like the
That could
Beatles, they're
be.
bigger than Jesus, right? It didn't work out great for the Beatles, so we'll see.
They got some grief for that, but they kind of were. I mean, at the time, uh, like they're billionaires now, almost. So,
Right.
uh,
So
who'd have thought?
yeah.
Yeah,
So
I never had. Well, I had an Apple II, and I still have that. 40 years later, and that's a testament, right, to
hmm
Apple's. I am also not an Apple fanboy, but that's a testament to Apple's attention to production quality,
yeah, just the
right?
longevity of these things. Like
Yeah.
we talked about in the first episode, but I didn't grow up with, this original Macintosh model behind me, but there's just like history behind it and just the way they made the product in its time. It's, kind of timeless, and people like me go out and buy these and set them up and play around with them, and it's still a fun experience. They, in a way, they made them timeless, and you don't really see people doing that with old I don't know, IBM computers as much as like running DOS or something. Like maybe like the really big nerds, I might actually do that, but I feel like it's more likely or not people would go out and get the old Macintoshes than that.
Right. The PCs don't have the same uniqueness, right? Like they're big metal boxes, and like okay, you might want to have one just for completeness of a
Mm-hmm.
collection or something like that, but um, you're not doing that. You're not thinking there's any um, historical, not historical, but um, like relevance. Like there's certain art pieces from history, right? That even if the subject matter is kind of boring, like they've stood the test of time.
Right.
And I think the Apple products generally fit into that. That's
Agreed.
that's the influence of Steve Jobs. He was almost single-minded about these things, whereas every other company, right, put that somewhere down way down the list of priorities, right? The design and quality were paramount to
Yeah.
him, and I'm glad to see that Apple has remembered that and stuck with it because they forgot about it after Jobs left the company in the 80s. They even went to a period of licensing clone makers, and a lot of those machines are just complete.
Oh
They're
yeah.
basically just PCs with a different chip, and
And
the
that I
cases
feel
are
like that hurt
junk.
their reputation for a while.
It did, yeah.
Yeah.
Um, so them reaching down into this new market though is interesting because uh, I wonder what it says about like have they reached a plateau of growth with the current computer product set, and
Could
are
be.
they trying to expand that and get some growth back into it now? And the one of the challenges with making really good products that last a long time is people don't buy them as often.
Yeah, it's sure. Like my
So
my daily driver, I think it's like 4 years old now, which is a MacBook Pro with the M1 Max chip or whatever it is. And
yeah,
besides the battery life, it still works great. I don't feel myself rushing out to need to buy a new laptop.
Yeah, mine is a M1 from 2020, so it's 6 years old,
Yeah,
and it's great. It's like a brand new machine. Of course, I'd never had that experience with any Windows computer ever. Like
right.
after a couple of years, you knew it was an old machine.
You have trouble starting that thing up, right?
Now, some of that could just be right. Um, uh, the industry did keep producing radically faster and faster computers. And we have now gotten to a point where, storage caught up with NVMe, storage. Now hard drives are infinitely fast. CPUs are 100 times faster than people typically need them to be. And um, so maybe it's like that with PCs now too. I haven't bought one in a long time, so I'm not sure. Maybe you folks can tell us out there in the world. Comment and let us know if that's your
Yeah,
experience as well.
let us know in the
Or
comments below. We'll happily
yeah,
discuss it with you in there.
uh, but I do have this Linux server here that I do some development on and run a lot of virtual machines on, and it's still pretty fast. Uh, and I got it around the same time I got uh, the MacBook. So maybe it is just you know um, we reached a point in the industry. Um,
Yeah. And yeah, maybe that's why they're, because those things have plateaued a little bit, they're able to offer them at a lower price just because it's cheaper, but they can still offer them at a lower price without sacrificing what makes the Macintosh a Macintosh.
right, their profit margin.
Yeah. All right. Well, maybe I can, maybe in an episode or two, I can pull in my fiance and she can show off her new MacBook Neo. She can let us know her thoughts on it. Um, she's
That'd be
probably
great.
listening to this right now and she's saying, no way, not going to do that. We'll see.
Is she there producing?
No, but I should bring her on and have her help me out with some of this stuff. Alrighty. So yeah, that was basically the episode. We're gonna end it the way we have in the last few. We're gonna talk about this day in tech history. So the day this episode goes live, it will be March 13th. And in this day in tech history, March 13th, 1986 is when Microsoft officially went public. So shares at the time in 1986 were $28 per share. And if you were around then and you were able to invest in their initial public offering, that share would be worth over $128,000 today. So, congratulations to anyone who did that and held on to it.
Somebody did. There's probably
Yeah,
been a few
somebody probably
somebodies.
has a few hundred, a few thousand, those in there living on a beach somewhere in a big house. So invite us
Somebody's
over sometime.
grandmother may have a shoebox with some
Oh my
share
gosh, you don't
certificates in
even
it. Can you
know about
imagine?
it, right? That's like the original version of losing Bitcoin. Yeah,
Yeah, right.
that's funny. Yeah, so yeah, that's the show. Thank you so much for listening to the Thinking and Tech podcast. If you enjoy the show, please make sure to follow us on your podcast service of choice or subscribe to our YouTube channel. If you're watching on YouTube, please, we appreciate if you click the like button and like Baz said, leave a comment. We have fun talking to people. I've already had some great discussions with people in our comment section already. So come join in on discussion. That's how we know people are enjoying what we're doing and helps us get discovered by new listeners. And let us know if you're someone who may be interested in appearing on the show as a guest. Email us at thinkingandtechpod@gmail.com. We'd love to hear from you. And just the disclaimer, views expressed in this podcast are completely of our own and do not reflect or represent the views of any past, current, or future employers. Thanks so much. We'll catch you around next time.